Well, good morning. Apologize for being late. Thank you for being prompt on this. We'd like to go ahead and call our hearing to order, and I'd like to be able to welcome our new and returning members to the subcommittee, and especially Ranking Member Murphy. Welcome to Congress, and glad to be able to work with you here on the Small Business Committee. I do look forward to working with all of our members in the 113th Congress, and I want to be able to give special thanks to our witnesses here today, taking time away from your full-time jobs, I know, to be able to come here and make this trip to Washington and to be able to tell us about some of the issues that are inhibiting our ability to be able to grow our economy and to be able to grow jobs in export markets. Today we will hear directly from small businesses about the obstacles and barriers that limit their ability to be able to compete in the global market. And given the right circumstances and tools, I know that America's small businesses are going to be able to compete with any other company in the world. There is strong bipartisan support on the benefits of exporting. Exports are a major contributor to the nation's GDP, totaling $2.2 trillion in 2012. And they provide new sales opportunities, and most importantly, exporting creates and supports high-paying American jobs. However, of the 28 small businesses in the United States, only 1% currently export. Increasing the number of small businesses as exporters is a key priority for me as well as the committee. Last year alone, I held 3 Export 101 events in my district so that small businesses could learn how to be able to increase their exports and how to develop new relationships in the key trading areas. Along with limited personnel, we know that small firms face a variety of trade barriers that constrain their participation in the global market. A few of the most obstructive hurdles include tariff and non-tariff barriers, anti-competitive technical standards, and complex foreign and domestic regulations. As a result, small businesses that do export rely heavily on negotiated free trade agreements, the FTAs, that remove complex trade barriers and provide protection for their intellectual property and help streamline the trade process. In 2010, 41% of the total U.S. exports went to FTA countries. FTAs are an important first step, but they are not the sole solution. We must also work to be able to reduce the domestic bureaucracy and make the overall process easier. The export process can be complicated and overwhelming, and many firms do not know where to start or where to go for the necessary information. Unlike large corporations, most small firms do have the personnel and resources to navigate the technical trade barriers. So as we begin the 113th Congress, it is our committee's job to be able to review the federal trade promotion agencies to ensure that they are working in a coordinated manner and an efficient manner to best serve small businesses. Moreover, we need to be able to support an aggressive trade strategy that opens up new foreign markets, streamlines the trade process, and strengthens our fight against unfair trade practices. I look forward to working with my colleagues to be able to identify common sense and practical solutions that will better assist small business exporters. Again, I'd like to be able to thank our witnesses for their participation and insights, and I'd now like to recognize our ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here. As the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade, I'm looking forward to working together to find common ground and bipartisan solutions. Having been a small business owner myself, I know the obstacles small businesses face, and I know how essential their success is in generating new jobs and driving our economic recovery. Earlier this week, I sat down with the distinguished chairman to discuss the important challenges facing America's small businesses. There's clearly much to be done, and as I said, I look forward to working with the chairman over the next 2 years, and I feel confident in our ability to drive bipartisan solutions through this subcommittee. Today, we hold our first subcommittee hearing on small business and their ability to participate in international trade, a realm in which big business continues to have a clear advantage, as the chairman said. We have before us 4 extremely knowledgeable witnesses, and I look forward to hearing their ideas on how Congress can help small business export their goods and be more competitive on the world stage. Right now, our economy is recovering gradually, and yet unemployment is not expected to drop below 7.5% until 2015, which will make 6 straight years of unemployment above 7.5%. As a result, the #1 priority for this committee has to be job creation. And one way to boost jobs is to open new markets to small businesses, which account for 50% of all jobs in the United States. Right now, small businesses make up 97% of all U.S. exporters, but only about 30% of the goods exported. I believe there are measures Congress can take to make international trade more accessible to small businesses and help even the playing field as demand for U.S. products on the global marketplace, which serves 95% of the world's consumers. Right now, the vast majority of our small businesses still do not market their products internationally. Of those that do, many only send their goods to our neighbors to the north and the south and do not take advantage of markets in Europe and Asia. Clearly, there remains significant opportunity to expand the role of small business in international trade. To address this area of potential growth, the Small Business Administration, the Export-Import Bank, and the International Trade Administration each offer programs specifically tailored to provide education, networking, technical, and financial assistance to small firms engaging in international trade. And I'm particularly interested in hearing about the experiences our witnesses had with these programs. This is one area I'm particularly concerned could suffer from Congress's inability to address the sequestration because it is vital these agencies have the resources they need to perform their essential work. SBA's export programs generate $1.6 billion in sales in fiscal year 2010 alone. That translates to real jobs here at home. We need to amplify, not reduce, these successful programs, while simultaneously cutting back on programs that have proven ineffective. Mandatory cuts across the board to SBA's budget would not achieve this. Agricultural exports is one area that is poised for expansion. Small farms constitute more than 90% of the sector. In 2011, U.S. agriculture exports reached nearly $140 billion, outpacing the previous record set in 2008 by 20%. This growth shows that America's farmers have the potential to help lead our economy forward, spurring development and employment gains across the country. This is especially true in my own district in Florida, which is recognized for its citrus and vegetable production. However, as we examine the best way to stimulate international trade among small businesses, we must recognize the double-edged nature of free trade agreements. Lowering tariffs and other barriers clearly spurs commerce between countries, but at the same time, we have seen new imports undercut hardworking U.S. businesses by introducing significantly cheaper goods into our market. For example, I recently visited Adams Ranch in Fort Pierce in my district, where I heard from farmers concerned that cheap Mexican tomatoes may be disrupting the marketplace for our growers. Learning what works and what hurts our small businesses is essential for any future trade agreements. Issues like these will continue to challenge small exporters, but I look forward to small firms' involvement in trade continuing to grow. Over the last decade, exports from smaller companies have doubled and are now valued at nearly $320 million per year. With 3/4 of world purchasing power outside the United States, access to foreign markets is no longer optional, but essential for many businesses' continued success. By helping more small firms export abroad, we can accelerate economic growth and create the jobs Americans so badly need. I thank the witnesses in advance for their testimony, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. And as our panel knows, you have 5 minutes to be able to deliver. Would like to be able to explain the timing lights in front of you. A little bit like traffic lights. When it's green, you're good to go. When it's yellow, speed up. When it gets red, stop. We would appreciate that. And I do know we have several members that have some other commitments to be able to go to, so I'll defer my questions for after your testimony. Our first witness is going to be Mr. Daniel Ogden. Dan is an attorney, licensed custom broker, and international trade consultant. He's also chairman of the National District Export Councils, also known as DECS. DECSs are local organizations comprised of international trade experts who volunteer their time to be able to provide counseling and best practices for small businesses interested in boosting their exports. Currently, there are 59 local DECs, or about 1,800 members covering nearly every region in the United States. He's testifying on behalf of the National District Export Councils. Welcome, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Tipton and Ranking Member Murphy. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to testify at the hearing and to share my views. My testimony will cover the importance of trade to the well-being and wealth of the U.S. economy, to the health and profitability of small business, and to the creation of job growth in the United States. I will also discuss the challenges to success that small business exporters face from government laws and regulations, both foreign and domestic, and the role that the Federal Government should play in advancing U.S. international trade interests. Initially, it must be stressed that small business exporters are small businesses first. They face the same challenges to their profitability that all small businesses face, and some of the most significant of these challenges arises from the U.S. domestic, regulatory, and legislative environment. In fact, small business exporters are unique in this regard, as they face challenges to their profitability from both the foreign and domestic arenas. In seeking then to answer the question, what can Congress do to assist small businesses increase their exports, one answer quite simply is to stop over-regulating, over-legislating, over-taxing small business. One specific area that does affect small business exporters is U.S. export controls law. While export controls are important to our national security and economic vitality, this does not necessitate that they be so complex and cumbersome that they discourage companies from exporting. The ongoing effort to reform U.S. export controls by simplifying both their administration and ease of compliance will increase the likelihood that U.S. exporters will increase their exports. I would also like to make a comment about U.S. trade policy in general. International trade contributes greatly to the wealth creation of an economy, which should be the goal of any economic policy. Trade is a two-way street. While exports are always praised, imports are not a bad thing. Being able to freely source the inputs and means of production is critical to the profitability of many small businesses. In spite of this fact, trade protection is a temptation and a disease that is bipartisan in nature. Protectionism is not a creator of wealth, but rather is a creator of poverty. Avoidance of a protectionist trade policy used either as a strategy or a tactic should be at the core of U.S. trade policy. This temptation to engage in protectionist trade policies is not, of course, unique to the United States. Protectionist trade policies in foreign countries are a fact of life that small business exporters have to deal with on a daily basis. And this fact makes trade agreements an essential component of U.S. trade policy. The major focus of trade agreements in the past has been on tariff reduction or elimination. This has resulted in foreign non-tariff trade barriers becoming the protectionist tool of choice. These barriers are especially damaging to our small business exporters. It is imperative, therefore, that ongoing and future negotiations on trade agreements stress non-tariff barrier reduction and elimination. There is one thing that Congress can do immediately, which is to renew trade promotion authority. This renewal is crucial for several reasons. Perhaps most importantly is the fact that the U.S. is falling behind other nations and entering into trade agreements, thereby putting our exporters at a competitive disadvantage. The TPA renewal will help to ensure that lost U.S. export sales from belated passage of trade agreements does not happen again. I would also like to briefly discuss U.S. export assistance. Why do U.S. exporters need this assistance? The answer is simple and can be stated in one word: competition. In an ideal world, American exporters will not have this need. We do not live in that world, however, as other countries provide assistance to their exporters. The Federal Government, therefore, has a critical role to play in ensuring that our exporters have a level playing field in which to globally compete by providing export assistance. One important feature of this assistance is that U.S. export assistance centers are in place locally to interface directly with exporters, which are, of course, part of the U.S. U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service. Despite the call over the years to eliminate the domestic commercial service, and particularly the USACs, their continued existence is vital and irreplaceable. The ability of USACs to directly interface with foreign commercial officers is also critical. It is imperative, therefore, that the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service remains a unified agency with both foreign and domestic operations under one roof. An important feature of export assistance also is that there should be just one Federal agency where exporters go for services such as trade counseling. At present, while the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service plays its primary role, the SBA also engages in trade counseling. This duplication is unnecessary, wasteful, and confusing. Only one Federal agency should be involved in international trade counseling, and that is the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service. Further, the amount budgeted for export assistance should also be increased. Part of this issue can be resolved by transferring to the International Trade Administration from the SBA funds that were used by the SBA for their international trade counseling programs. And I would just say also that taxpayer dollars spent in export assistance is money well spent. One final issue is the Commerce Department's plan to reorganize the International Trade Administration. While one positive feature of this plan is the integration of certain export services that will both help exporters find new markets and customers and actually get their hands into those markets, or the products, goods into those markets, into the hands of those customers It is also important to assure that under this plan that the operations of the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service continue to be customer and field focused. In some areas I am out of time. I would refer you to my written testimony as to my specific recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden. Our next witness is Ms. Jenny Fulton, Chief Pickle and CEO of Miss Jenny's Pickles. After being laid off from her financial industry job, Jenny Fulton co-founded Ashley Fur, used Jenny's grandmother's recipes to start making pickles. Founded in 2009, Miss Jenny's Pickles is becoming a household name. Their products are sold in over 800 stores, and the company export pickles all over the world. They're also featured in a segment on CBS's 60 Minutes last October. She is testifying on behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Jenny, thank you for being here, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Tippman and Ranking Member Murphy, and distinguished members of the U.S. House Committee of Small Business Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade. I am Jenny Fulton, and I am the Chief Pickle at Old Orchard Foods, doing business as Miss Jenny's Pickles. Our Pickle World headquarters is in Kernersville, North Carolina. I'm extremely honored and grateful for this opportunity to share our story with each of you. I am testifying on behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Miss Jenny's Pickles was born out of the financial recession. Ashley Fur was laid off in June of 2009, and my layoff followed in January of 2010. Ashley and I confirmed after spending 16 years in the financial industry, we were both burned out, and we decided to take a true leap of faith and start our own pickle company. Knowing that 95% of the world's population lives outside the United States, we decided that exporting would be crucial to our success. In May of 2011, the North Carolina Department of Agriculture's Export Department and the Southern United States Trade Association, SUSTA, organized an inbound trade mission for Chinese buyers to meet with North Carolina businesses, in which we decided to participate. Wow, what an adventure. I met Mr. Shen there, and he's our China business partner. After hours of reading Chinese emails translated by Google, talking via Skype with a 12-hour time difference, and 32 pages of documents later, we finally exported our first 5 pallets of pickles to China. Last year, the North Carolina Export Department and SUSTA took a trade mission to Shanghai for a food show. I went along there, and it was then that I had the opportunity to visit the stores that carry Miss Jenny's Pickles. I must be honest, I was extremely amazed, humbled, and proud to be standing next to our pickles on the shelf in China. It was rewarding to know that I was representing the United States of America, which has world-recognized food safety regulations. Last year, I also participated in a trade mission to Canada, arranged by these same good people. It was there that we hired a Canadian food broker. And this year, I'll be going to Hong Kong and Germany. And during the early stages of working in the international marketplace, we attended a forum in Charlotte called Small Business Global Access, hosted by Senator Kay Hagan, along with Chairman and President of Export-Import Bank, Fred Hochberg. I was so impressed with Fred's remarks on XM's efforts to help small business export that I ran out to his car after the forum, and I handed a jar of pickles to his driver, and I said, "Tell Fred to eat these pickles, because we want to export this year." And today, we partner with the XM Bank so that we can offer terms to our foreign buyers, which increases our sales by having this option. Without the XM Bank, our small business would never have been able to offer terms outside the United States. And without my out-of-the-jar thinking and pure determination to export, I'm not sure that our young company would have had such great success. Now, if more U.S. small businesses were able to seize export opportunities, the gains could be immense. I have seen firsthand for the government to improve communications regarding U.S. export programs. After our company was featured on 60 Minutes, we received hundreds of emails and phone calls from Americans all across the country. They want to start their own company too. Well, small business needs help paving the way to new markets. We are left on our own to find the doors and knock on them. The services, expertise, and dedication of the state and federal export promotion programs are world class. But I know there are many companies not aware of the government services that are available to help them break into new markets. This isn't the fault of America's small business owners. There are many successful state programs out there that I believe could be replicated in other states. For example, in North Carolina, the Department of Agriculture is aggressively helping North Carolina companies export. These good people encourage companies like mine to consult with trade specialists, to learn more about trade through workshops, seminars, to participate in trade missions, and to meet with international buying delegations. They've even opened an office in Beijing. Without their help, we would not have found the international market opportunities. On the federal level, the Government Accountability has determined that 17 federal agencies with export promotion programs could be made more effective through better coordination. As the president of a small company, I truly understand the importance of international trade and the impact it can have on small business. It's simple. We want to ship to more countries, we want to grow our client base, and we want to create more jobs. Congress can do one big thing that'll make a really big difference for small businesses today, and that's by creating one website with all the resources, all the links available to export. You know, you can do it in one click. It's going to be that simple because it's really hard out there. And we need to make it easy for small business to succeed and not fail in our global marketplace. By communicating effectively to small business, you will generate billions of dollars in new American exports. There are many seasoned exporters among American small business, but there are many that have never even considered exporting. I know that exporting can be challenging and overwhelming, especially for small business, but in the end, it's all worth it. In closing, I challenge each one of you to better promote the trade resources that are available to small businesses. Thank you for the privilege and opportunity to appear before you today. It has been my honor.
Thank you, Ms. Fulton. Easy to see why you sell pickles well. So, I'd now like to yield Ranking Member Murphy to be able to introduce our next witness.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to introduce Michael Meyer, the Interim State Director of the Florida Small Business Development Center Network. Mr. Meyer has over 22 years of experience in small business development. Prior to his current role, he was State Director for the Minnesota Office of Entrepreneurship and Small Business Development, responsible for entrepreneurial and small business policy development and support services. Mr. Meyer is a graduate of the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota and is also a certified public accountant. Welcome.
Great. This is why we do what we do. Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Murphy, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Mike Myrie, and I serve as the Interim State Director for the Florida Small Business Development Center Network. The Florida SBDC is part of America's SBDC network, providing the knowledge resources small businesses need to start, grow, and succeed. I have prepared a written statement and will give you a summary of those remarks. In the context of my testimony, I ask you to keep a few key statistics in mind on why it is essential to support trade policy and investment in the SBDC program for the benefit of small businesses. Research shows that companies that export grow 15 to 20% faster, pay 15% higher wages, and are 15% more profitable than their domestic market-only counterparts. The mission of the SBDC program is simple: to help small businesses grow and compete. With a national network of nearly 1,000 centers and 5,000 professionals, America's SBDCs offer a wide variety of programs and no-cost services to assist and encourage their small business clients to expand. In that effort, SBDCs retain specialized professional business consultants who are driven to help their clients research and develop specific strategies to expand into international markets and grow revenues. And we know with more revenues comes more production, and with more production comes more jobs. Now, not all small businesses are ready to export, and many shouldn't. At SBDCs around the country, we strive to identify those that are, or are close to being export ready. We provide every small business client with an honest and accurate assessment of their state of their firm and their state of readiness to participate in the global marketplace. We help to examine the exportability of their products and services, research and identify markets and buyers, develop market entry strategies, establish necessary shipping and distribution networks, determine appropriate payment methods, and identify export financing and insurance needs. A key competitive advantage large businesses have over small businesses is access and affordability to business and trade data and the means to use it. SBDCs equal the playing field. Through our educational and partner organizations, our professionals have access to a wealth of information on export markets, ranging from general country information to specialized information on markets to specific industries and products in countries worldwide. In some cases, SBDCs can also conduct primary research for our small business clients, needing specific information unavailable through secondary resources. Further, we employ, through our professionals, the power to interpret and use that data. SBDCs also help balance the playing field by offering guidance and expertise in the realm of regulations that govern international trade. In recent years, the federal government has tightened export regulations in response to growing threats to national security. By working in partnership with the Census Bureau and other agencies, SBDCs help small businesses get their documentation right the first time, ensuring compliance and mitigating the threat of loss of business. Helping small businesses attract and handle financing has always been a cornerstone strength of the SBDC network. Navigating what resources are most applicable can be confusing without the proper guidance. In international trade, SBDCs work closely with SBA's Export Loan Program, the Export-Import Bank, and conventional financial institutions to help small businesses identify and apply for appropriate funding to support their international trade activities. Without these funds, many businesses would face uncertainty and potentially unnecessary risk and loss. In conclusion, 90% of the world market exists outside the borders of the United States. Nonetheless, only 1% of our small businesses export their goods and services. The biggest barrier to going international a small business owner faces is fear, and fear is a result of a lack of knowledge. As you know, international trade assistance is incredibly specialized and complex. SBDCs offer a wide range of international trade services, including helping assess a firm's readiness to export, navigating the regulatory maze, and identifying and applying for appropriate funding. But these services are extremely resource intensive. What small businesses need to exceed in their further expansion in the world marketplace and the advantages that come with it are free trade agreements that are clear and focused on small business interest, tariff and export controls that are uniform, clear, and specific, but above all else, they need the confidence that comes with the knowledge they get from their SBDC professional that exporting is the right investment for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And our final witness is Mr. Raymond Arth. He is the President and CEO of Phoenix Products, Inc., based in Avon, Ohio. He started his company with his brothers back in 1977. Phoenix Products is a small manufacturer that produces a line of faucets that are primarily used in recreational vehicles and residential homes. Their products are distributed throughout the United States and Canada, and they are currently working to expand into Mexico and Latin America. He's testifying on behalf of the Small Business Exporters Association. Welcome, and Mr. Arth, you have your 5 minutes for your testimony.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Murphy, and the members of the Small Business Subcommittee on Agriculture, Trade, and Energy. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to testify today. As you heard, Phoenix Products is a manufacturer of plumbing faucets, and I'm here to represent that company. And I'm also here on behalf of the Small Business Exporters Association, the country's oldest and largest nonprofit organization devoted to promoting small business and medium-sized export activities. It's an international arm of the National Small Business Association. Phoenix Products is the last standalone company that makes our product category, low-cost, primarily plastic faucets. And as you heard, recreational vehicles and factory-built HUD-code homes, think Winnebago motor homes or double-wide mobile homes as the target market. This is a market that has a lot of demand, but unfortunately over the last 10 years it has come to be dominated by suppliers from China and Taiwan who are able to offer products at much lower prices than we can meet. So today we're faced with the unpleasant reality of diminishing market shares in our core markets, and we've had to turn to foreign partners to provide some low-end and high-end products. So we're having faucets manufactured for us in addition to what we make in our own factory. I'm pleased to report that in 2012, 70% of our faucet sales revenues were derived from the faucets we make in our factory from domestic components. But in 2008, 85% of our faucet sales were from domestic products. So our share is diminishing, and we're at risk of losing the critical mass we need to sustain a manufacturing operation. We need a certain level of activity to make it all make sense. And so we've identified export sales as the important element that will determine whether or not we continue to be a manufacturer of products or evolve into more of a branded distributor of imported products. In 2009, I spoke with folks at the Small Business Exporters Association, and they suggested we get in touch with the U.S. Export Assistance Centers, or USIAC, as a resource to help us make our efforts. And we had selected Mexico for a number of reasons. We contacted the USIAC in March of 2009, and 4 years later, I'm sorry to report that we have yet to make our first sale out in Mexico, our target market. We've learned a lot. We have had we've taken a lot of important first steps, but we're still not able to close that last little gap. So I have a couple observations I'd like to share based on our failure so far to crack into this market and how it might affect what you're thinking about as we go forward. As you've heard, it is very hard for a small business to negotiate and enter into new international markets. There's a knowledge problem finding out who the prospects are, where to go. We've got all the compliance issues, dealing with U.S. law and regulations and the laws and regulations of our target country. So the efforts to consolidate technical assistance and coordinating all the providers is an important step that you folks can take. Overall, I'll give the USIAC fairly good grades, but the service has been uneven. And the Cleveland office has worked very hard for us, but the commercial officers in Mexico City have not been able to provide the same level of support as the domestic offices. Related to information, Chairman Tipton, I do want to recognize the transparent rules allowing direct export or trade act for small business and jobs that you introduced in last session, and suggest you consider reintroducing it in this section. A second important factor is that free trade agreements do matter. We have selected Mexico as our first target market because our goods cross the border duty-free, while Chinese and Taiwanese imports face substantial tariffs at the border. This makes our products more competitive vis-a-vis the foreign competition and improves our chances for success in Mexico. In other countries where we have free trade agreements, I think the same rules apply. And Canada, with whom we've had the longest running relationship, we don't even consider to be an export sales. Sometimes we worry more about selling to California than Canada. Finally, the Ex-Im Bank, you've heard, is very important. And getting paid is the end of the whole cycle. And there's no way for a company like ours to really have entered the market internationally, been able to offer credit terms, identifying creditworthy accounts in the first place, and then the loan guarantees and other programs that Ex-Im Bank can bring to support our efforts will be a key element when we finally make that final step and secure customers outside the United States. Should we prove to be successful beyond our wildest dreams, they may even then serve the role of providing some working capital financing to help us support the growth, though we're confident we can support everything in our plans. So in the time allowed, those are my summary comments today, and you can find more in the written testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Arth, and I appreciate the pitch for our bill. We will be introducing that transparency bill again. So we'll now begin the questioning portion of our committee hearing, and I'd like to begin with Mr. Mulvaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions for a couple different folks. Mr. Arth, we'll pick up right where you left off, which is you're saying that you've identified Mexico as a potential export market. You did that because your goods cross the border relatively easily, but then you said you had compliance issues. I thought we had a free trade agreement with Mexico that would make it easier to trade down there. Has that not been your experience? Aside from getting the things across the border, what has NAFTA done for you?
Well, the biggest thing NAFTA has done for us is the fact that our products do cross duty-free, which helps level the playing field with Chinese and Taiwanese imports. There is one compliance issue that's different with respect to plumbing standards. The United States and Canada have a harmonized standard, so that if I
have or have not?
Have.
Okay.
A harmonized standard. So if I design and build my faucets to the standard in the United States, it's the same as the standard in Canada. Mexico has a whole different certification process. It's a NOM certification. And I'm told that the exact certification is somewhat dependent upon the classification that's assigned at the border. And apparently it's not as clear-cut as some might think. So we're trying to find what we'd like as a Mexican agent, a sales rep or trading company or some partner in Mexico that we can work with, who can actually take the product across the border so we can make that final determination on which standard we need to get to and complete that regulatory hoop.
Gotcha. Now, you talked a little bit as well about competing with China and Taiwan, saying you're having some difficulty competing with them at certain price points. What is it? Where is their competitive advantage coming from? Is it all labor, or is it also regulatory environment in China and Taiwan? What do you get a feel for where their advantages lie?
I think there are some structural advantages that they do have, and it probably is more regulatory and compliance issues at our end than, or they have fewer of them.
Can you give me an example?
Well, I can tell you that the material costs that we're paying are probably all pretty much global material costs. Okay. My cost for a product at the very end of my assembly line is not that far different if I take just some direct labor and material from the invoice price for a product I'm importing from China. Now, I've got a whole lot of factory overhead that has to be added into that, and then I've got my own administrative staff and the costs of people that we have. A quick example, my father sold his company in 1971. He had 135 employees. I can kind of go through all the capacities they had. They did not have a human resource manager, 135 employees. They did their payroll in-house because you took hours, work times a rate, you paid people, and once a month or once a quarter you send in your payroll taxes. I've got 31 people on my payroll. I have a college-educated part-time HR manager who works for us 20 hours a week. I have my payroll processed by an outside agency because I've got 8 payroll deposit periods a month. I mean, all of these things add on to the cost of just running the essential functions of a business here in the United States today.
Gotcha. And a couple quick questions for both you and Ms. Fulton regarding the Export-Import Bank. Which tell me specifically, Ms. Fulton, what they did for you, how you use the Export-Import Bank as a small business.
Well, we actually are their number 500 customer on their Express insurance. So I'll be meeting with Mr. Shin on Tuesday, and he was our first importer of Miss Jane's pickles in China.
Right.
So I'm going to be able to give him terms, which is going to also allow him to buy more pickles from me. So the Ex-Im Bank, without the insurance, I couldn't afford to take that risk. Because, you know, normally we would make them pay up front. Well, if they pay 100% up front, they reduce their sale order.
So it's a bridge loan, essentially? the export-
Basically, it's insurance, and they're guaranteeing the invoice or the purchase order that Mr. Shin gives me up to 97%, 96%, and I can afford to take a 4% risk. I can't afford to take a 100% risk.
Mr. Arth, same question to you. How do you all use the Export-Import Bank?
It's pretty much exactly what you've heard here. The first step would be we need to be able to offer credit terms to buyers in other countries. And the Ex-Im Bank, number one, does have knowledge, information resources to help us qualify creditworthy buyers. And then the second piece is this credit insurance that they offer so that if we are not paid after a 60 or 90-day period, I forget exactly, the Ex-Im Bank will step up, basically buy the debt from us at better than 90% of its face, and then they will take steps to collect the money.
And last question for you, Mr. Myra. You mentioned very briefly that you wish the free trade agreements that we have and that we're negotiating now would be more focused on small business. Give me 2 or 3 examples of how we can do that as we go through these negotiations.
Well, we know that free trade agreements tend to provide preferential treatment to larger businesses, and small businesses tend to be an afterthought in the free trade agreements that currently exist.
But give me specifics as we sit down at the table and say, this is what we need for small business.
I couldn't probably isolate 2 or 3 examples. I can get those for you and provide those to you at a later time.
That would be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd now like to recognize Ranking Member Murphy for his questions. Do we have anybody else? You'll defer here as well. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Kindly, ranking members willing to defer his time. Mr. Holzkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought this was a violation of the rules. 2 Republicans in a row. Is that permitted here? I guess so. No, I apologize. Thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate the testimony, especially folks from the real world and Jennifer, Mr. Arth. I had a follow-up question first, though, for Ms. Fulton, and appreciate your testimony. And fairly new to exporting, could you give a little more insight on what you think the biggest barrier to expanding your sales in the future, whether it's in China or you're looking at other countries as well?
Thank you. It's just been a wonderful opportunity. You know, I knew that 95% of the world lived outside the United States, being in the financial background. So if I decided to keep our sales just in the United States, I'm missing a huge opportunity of clients. What would help us is resources like I'm getting ready to export to Canada. Well, that's a bilingual label that's got to go on there. Well, I've had to contact 5 different people to figure out how to get that done. Fortunately, the North Carolina Ag Department export has been essential and crucial in SUSTA. But, you know, I'm not saying everybody's got to put everything together, but if we could have a nice umbrella for people to get to where, okay, if I want to export to Germany, because I'm going to Germany and that's on my goals for 2013, I'd like to know a little bit of steps in advance on what I've got to do to get my product over there without having to contact 20 different places. So to me, we've got the technology, we've got the resources. Let's put it all together and help us, because that's time and money, and you know that's important in our world.
Well, thank you, Ms. Fulton. Mr. Ogden, I had a question. I've got a small company in my district called Vortex Valves, that, and he specifically cited tariffs as a real barrier around the world. What markets do you see that present the biggest opportunity for us to open up markets, particularly for small businesses, if we're able to reduce tariffs? What should be our next targeted place for that would be most small business friendly?
Well, of course, we have ongoing talks, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and there's a lot of markets in Asia that small businesses are able to go to. The prospective trade agreement with the European Union is essential. And let me just follow up a little bit on what some others have said. Some of these barriers specifically that really affect small businesses, one of them is standards. One of my fellow North Texas District Export Council members, and I mentioned in my written testimony, International Chemicrete Corporation, they make construction materials used all over the world. And they comply with I think it's the ASTM standards, which are internationally recognized for construction materials. But what happens is many of these other countries that they have to deal with will have different standards. And so, and Mr. Arth talked about this as well, what he's facing. So what happens is you have to go to get your product into that country, you have to modify it in some respect, perhaps even change the nature of the product. That adds up to your costs, and that puts you at a competitive disadvantage against the local producers in that market. And so standards are a big deal. Intellectual property protection, trade secrets is a huge deal. I know the Deputy Undersecretary Blank just came out with a new strategy that the Commerce Department has in trade secrets. So these are just two examples of these barriers. But in terms of specific markets, Asia is a very much a growing region right now. I think another area where we need to pay attention to is Latin America. It's always South America is always kind of the backwater, so to speak, but I think there's opportunities there. There's frankly opportunities all over the world. We just need to make sure that we have really good commercial diplomacy, really good trade agreements in effect, and that we're very forward thinking in that respect.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden. And the last question from Mr. Arth, and I also have a constituent that's having difficulties exporting to Mexico and concern. We have NAFTA. Why are those happening? Could you describe, I mean, if something more general, if you're seeing outside your particular industry that you say small businesses trying to export to Mexico, what are some barriers that perhaps we could reduce with our efforts up here?
Well, the problem that I've had really relates to finding a partner in Mexico to work with.
Okay.
The commercial services did a great job. They had a wonderful forum in Mexico City, the Trade Winds Forum on Mexico and the Americas. It was underpriced. Let me make a point that you didn't charge enough for that, and so if they had charged more, there might have been more resources available at the point people came back. I had 4 gold key meetings, which were very productive, identifying prospective customers. I was ready to go, and I didn't expect the commercial services staff to work those accounts on my behalf. I need to find a partner in Mexico to work with me. And where in Cleveland the UCAC seems to have connections to local governmental and private sector organizations that are involved in trade, the commercial services in Mexico City weren't really equipped to connect me to people or even identify a trade rep organization or industry councils or those kinds of folks where I might go to find those people who could assist us.
Well, appreciate the comments, and I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
And now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Murphy for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Myrie, thank you for your testimony from the Small Business Development Center's invaluable work assisting small businesses grow domestically and overseas. It's heartening to know that the SBDCs help provide some clarity in the maze of U.S. Foreign government regulation and trade. You noted in your testimony that we need clear free trade agreements and uniform tariffs and export controls to help make 90% of the world's markets accessible to our small businesses. Can you provide more specifics on what measures would be most helpful for small businesses to expand internationally?
Well, I can't specifically answer, and I'd go back to our national association to get that specific information or recommendations. But what I can tell you is that SBDCs are really working with the agencies to help those businesses navigate the regulatory requirements to making sure that they meet the compliance requirements necessary to do business in international markets.
That leads to my follow-up. And Mr. Ogden's testimony, he stated that SBA's trade counseling program should be eliminated and funding transferred to the U.S. and foreign commercial service. What's your view of that?
I wouldn't agree with Mr. Ogden's opinion. You know, the SBDC program has been working and doing trade assistance and trade consulting with small businesses for more than 35 years. We know that the mission of SBA is to help small businesses in all aspects. And as an SBA economic development program, SBDCs are instrumental to that process. It sounds nice to put it underneath a single umbrella with a single focus, but we know that small businesses need more than just simply trade assistance when they're expanding into international markets. It changes their business model in a lot of ways. And in SBDC assistance, the broader assistance that we provide is necessary.
Do any of the other witnesses have any comments on that?
Yes, Ranking Member Murphy. My position is that the SBA does a great job when someone comes in and say, hey, I want to start a business. How do I get started? How do I develop a business plan? How do I maybe get some access to startup capital? Everything that you would call the pre-export phase. And they do a great job in that, and that's really what they were created to do. But I think when a company is in the position where they've got some domestic sales, they've got themselves organized, then there needs to be one place they go for export counseling in all respects. Now, I'm not talking about the SBA export loan program. That is a completely separate thing. In fact, the USACs work very much with the SBA in that. What I'm talking about is the trade counseling. And this isn't just coming from me. This is coming from numerous exporters. In fact, every single district export council member I've talked to agrees with me on this, that the expertise is in the U.S. and foreign commercial service, that they should be the place where export assistance and trade counseling is done. And Ms. Fulton talked about some of this, where do I go for assistance? Well, if there's one federal agency providing that assistance, it's going to make it much easier for exporters to go. And so, the point is, I think that there's a duplication of effort, and the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service has the resources to have the orientation. All they do is provide. They're involved in exports, export assistance, and trade counseling. That's their mission. That's their focus. And I just don't think the SBA should be involved in that part. They're certainly great in helping companies get started, but when it comes to exporting, that function should go to the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service.
As we sit here in the Small Business Committee, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, if it was all under one umbrella, how these small businesses, how Ms. Fulton, for example, would compete with the Microsofts of the world, and how those huge corporations, they would probably deserve and probably get a lot more attention than Ms. Fulton, for example.
Well, actually, that's a really good question, and the simple answer is the Microsofts really don't need the U.S. Export Assistance Centers. They've got the internal resources and the staff to do a lot of things. The biggest consumer of Gold Key programs, for example, which is a crucial component of the foreign commercial service, are small businesses. Small businesses are the ones that go to the export assistance centers. That's really where their focus is. And in fact, the district export councils, even though we have large companies that have members on the decks, our focus is the SME market. And that's the same focus that the Foreign Commercial Service has. And the idea that a small business is going to be at a disadvantage from a larger company to go into USAC just is not. That's just factually incorrect, and it's just the opposite. So that is just not a concern that I have.
I'm sure you're familiar with Boeing and their use of it. I mean, that's
Export-Import Bank, right.
Alliances with commerce.
Well,
Boeing.
First of all, this idea that the Exim Bank is Boeing's bank is just it's a ridiculous idea. The Exim Bank is the bank for people like Ms. Fulton. Most of their, for example, you talk about the export credit insurance programs. Most of the consumers of that programs are small businesses. Again, large companies, they have the internal resources and the staff. They don't need a lot of the services provided by the USACs. And of course, the USACs are separate from the Exim Bank anyway. It's a completely different agency. So the fact that eliminating the SBA's trade counseling program would in no way inhibit small businesses from going to either to the SBA or the Exim Bank for the export financing needs. Again, we're not talking about, I'm not advocating at all the SBA get out of the export financing aspect. That should remain, okay? So I'll make that clear. But the fact that the SBA is no longer involved in trade counseling is not going to affect small business, in my opinion. In fact, it will help the situation.
Ms. Fulton?
Well, being the small business person, all I'm asking, I don't care who's doing what, is to put it up on the website and say,
He wants her
here's
website.
what you need to do. Because this is crazy. I'm just telling you. All you want to know is, hey, if I want to export here, then I contact the U.S. Export Department or the U.S. Commerce or the North Carolina. It's a mess. You can't find it easy. We got to grow jobs. You talked about 7.5% unemployment. I take a phone call every day from somebody who wants to start their own business, and they don't know what to do. They call me. That's not, I mean, I don't mind, but then I can't do my business. We need just an overall website that says if you want to start your business, start with small business, start with SCORE. You don't know how many people I've told, go see SCORE, or go here to export. So I'm just saying, y'all got to fix this.
Thank you. And I think that's part of our job here is to push the president on some of his initiatives that he's laid out to centralize everything into one website. Because like you said, we do have the technology. Let's put it to use. So I think that's something that we could probably do in a bipartisan manner here, is to urge the president to do this in a timely fashion.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Did you have a follow-up?
I do. Just a response to Mr. Ogden's comment. If SBA's mission was to only help pre-venture individuals start businesses, then I would completely agree with him. But the reality is that SBDCs help and primarily dedicate their resources, their consulting resources, to the small and medium-sized enterprises that offer the greatest potential to add jobs to our economy. So in Florida, I can speak specifically that 75% of the consulting that we do, the hours that we dedicate in human resource professional consultant time go to small and medium-sized enterprises. And a big part of that is helping them develop market expansion strategies. And international trade assistance is an important part of that. In Florida and in the National SBDC Network, I know our SBDCs are working in partnership with USIACs and have a very cooperative and working relationship with them. We also have in Florida a STEP program. We help businesses develop export marketing plans where we sit and research and develop those specific strategies and then pass them on to the Gold Key service. And it's part of a program that we have specifically for those small and medium-sized enterprises.
Thank you. Mr. Arth, you point out that the NAFTA created an opportunity for your company by ensuring that products sold to Mexico are duty-free. What are your views on the more recently enacted trade agreements with Korea, Panama, Colombia, and do you feel these agreements will create similar results?
When I was at the Trade Winds Forum in Mexico City, I also met with the senior commercial officers from a number of Latin American countries. You mentioned Colombia. The senior commercial officer from Colombia was very enthusiastic about my product, and in that time, before we had a free trade agreement, it looked like a good opportunity for me. I have tried to move slowly and not bite off more than I could chew. Mexico could be a huge market for us, so I focused all my attention there. But it seemed as though there was a good opportunity for us there potentially before the free trade agreement came into effect, and I would imagine now it could be an even better opportunity for us. I wish I had the resources in-house. Understand, I do this when I'm not visiting Winnebago or working with an RV dealer or doing all the other things I have to do as company president. So I do believe that these will create opportunities. For me, I'm not so sure Korea is a great market, Coles to Newcastle kind of situation. But I do think in the Western Hemisphere clearly, and perhaps the transatlantic trade agreements that are being discussed with the European Union could be worthwhile for a company like mine.
Thank you. You noted the important role that Ohio, the state, what they played in your efforts to export. Ms. Fulton, you praised the state of North Carolina and your trade initiatives. Have you found that the states are filling a void that in some areas should be filled by the federal government? And if so, what are some recommendations you have?
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
I would say in North Carolina, they absolutely are filling some voids in the fact that they're holding our hand. They're bringing qualified buyers in to North Carolina for North Carolina products. So I think, a lot of other states can take note, because I didn't worry when I walked in that room and Mr. Shin said, I want to buy Miss Jenny's pickles. I knew it was okay, where, maybe that's something we do at a federal level. And I don't mind the state doing it. I'm just telling you, it was really hard. And I know a lot of information out there that I still don't know, that I probably need to know. But being only 3 years old and exporting is our new focus, and one of them, it would just make everything easier to help out. And I do think, everybody's busy. I mean, you're busy, I'm busy. We just got to make it simpler. And the state of North Carolina has done a fantastic job.
Mr. Arth?
I'm not sure there's that big a void right now as much as the coordination of all the efforts. As you may be aware, Ohio used to maintain their own international trade offices in half dozen or more countries around the globe. They had a trade office in Mexico City, and I was working with the folks in Columbus as well as the USIAC as I was going forward. When things kind of ground to a halt with the USIAC, I was disappointed that Ohio had closed their trade office, but that was really a duplicative function that if it was being done well once in Mexico City, we shouldn't need them both doing it. So this whole notion of making a central point of information and trying to coordinate all these resources. In 4 years working with the USIAC, I thought I had identified all the good resources and had either gone to work with them or determined that they didn't apply quite yet. Yet this morning, talking with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Ogden, I've discovered that both the SBDC and the DECs have some support features that may well serve what we're going to do going forward. And so I've got a couple more phone calls and contacts to make as we try to cross the border into Mexico.
Great. I'll yield my time back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I'd now like to recognize Mr. Meyer for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Fulton, thank you for your testimony today. It's great to see an entrepreneur, somebody who you had a difficult situation, you made lemonade out of lemons or pickles out of cucumbers, whichever you want to talk about.
Thank you so much.
But, it's nice to see that the American dream is still alive.
Thank
and
you.
an example of that hard work, initiative, entrepreneurial spirit can make it all work. And I know it's difficult to work yourself through the maze of all of the different rules and regulations, programs, policies, and all the other things, but you've done a good job and you need to be congratulated for that. So
Thank you so much.
Whenever you said you all fix it, be careful what you wish for.
I understand.
Part of the medical creed is first you do no harm. So coming to the federal government, maybe that's what we need to do too. First do no harm. But you've experienced some things obviously that are important from the standpoint of seeing how the system works, what can actually be done, what can't be done. Just a quick question for with regards to, do you have an SBA loan by any chance?
I do not.
Okay.
I do have a line of credit, but I couldn't get that line of credit until last year when we had been in business right at 3 years. We did talk to the SBA about a loan in the beginning, and because remember, I was a financial advisor, not a pickle maker. I had no experience, so there was no opportunity for me to get funding.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm just curious about it. What percentage of your business comes from foreign trade right now?
5%, and I want to take it to 25%.
25%.
Yes, sir. That's my goal.
Have you had any problems with, at this point, with currency manipulation, currency valuations between the countries that you're dealing with? Is that a problem for you at all?
Well, I'll tell you, a little bit, and that's a great point. One thing that we learned is on our label, and again, these are going to be left for y'all to have later, is by putting that American flag on
You're
there.
bribing us, by the way?
No. I'm from North Carolina.
We can't take that.
Southern
You realize
hospitality.
that.
We'll leave them and see what happens.
Okay.
Anyway, what I was
Staff
gonna
has
say-
lunch shortly here, so I'm sure they're going to have some.
Yeah. What I was going to say is when people outside the United States see that American flag on our label, they know it's a premium product. They know there's food safety regulations that have produced this product, and they're willing to pay a premium. So in the beginning, our price point in China was a little high. The good news is we've got that American flag on there. It's not every Chinese person speaks English, so we came up with the international sign. If you want to know how to communicate, it's a thumbs up. And that's what they gave me when they tried Miss Jenny's Pickles in Shanghai. So we've also reduced our price. But it was a problem in the beginning. But the flag on the label made a big difference. I'll just tell you that.
So you deal with China. Mr. Arth, you deal with mostly the Latin American countries at this point. Is that right? Are you worldwide?
Actually, we do buy materials from China and Taiwan.
Okay.
So we're
Have you
doing it
found a
in the-
problem? Have you found a problem with currency valuations between the countries at all?
Are you talking about fair valuation?
Yeah, right. I mean, because I know the Chinese are trying to manipulate the currency a little bit. And it kind of causes some problem for some of our manufacturers who buy
it's
products.
very difficult for us to be able to point to that and say with any certainty that they're manipulating the currency. It has been relatively stable. I mean, our contracts for purchasing materials always have a set exchange rate, and that's true with the Taiwan dollar as well as the RMB.
Okay, you're in a business where you compete probably against a lot of, I think you made the comment with regards to other products from other countries, especially with a metal product. I know that there's a lot of dumping that goes on, especially from the Chinese, Taiwanese, Philippines, that area of the world, the Asian Pacific Rim. I've got some companies in my own area that have problems with that. Have you experienced that at all with those countries dumping stuff here that compete against your products and need some trade protection, perhaps?
I'm not sure that dumping is going on today with respect to our core products, which would be the plastic faucets. Metal faucets are going through a whole new adventure right now because of the pending lead law that's going to take effect in January of next year. There may be dumping going on now just to get rid of old inventory while it's still saleable. With respect to the plastic faucet commodity, I don't think there's a great deal of manipulation or games being played in other countries to promote that product. When they first came into this country, there were some prices that looked pretty strange, below material cost almost. But today, I think things have normalized.
I've got just a few seconds left. One quick question for you. I see you represent the Small Business Export Association. What % of small businesses export their products out of this country?
Oh, geez, it's in my testimony, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head. I believe it's less than 1%, 280 or just over 1%, 287,000 small businesses out of the 27.9 million. So a little over 1% are actively exporting.
Okay, do you have an idea, just very quickly, the number of businesses that actually sell a part or a product to another company that export that product then?
That I don't have a clue, but I'm confident that my faithful staff can help provide a response to that.
Because it all ties together with regards to, even though you may not import or export directly, if you're having problems with if the company that you sell your product to has problems, then that means you have problems as well. So,
correct.
Again, thank you for testimony. I'm out of time. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. King, for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the witnesses for your testimony. As I'm listening to this, I'm starting to think, well, I remember back in 1975 when I started a business, my biggest fear was government regulation, and how many different hurdles did I have to leap over that I didn't know existed, and I would find them usually at my peril. So the burden of even domestically starting a small business that many years ago has to be multiple times greater today. And once you jump through all those hoops, it would seem to me that you would be acclimated to get through a few more in foreign countries. However, different hoops in each country, and that can be the barrier. I'm curious, and I go first to Mr. Arth. How many countries do you do business in, export to?
Today we have distributors in Canada that we sell to, and then also U.S. distributors who take our products across the border into Canada. We do very small export sales to Australia, to Colombia. We used to do Panama. I'm not sure if that's still current. I did list the countries in my testimony.
Mexico
there are
included?
a handful, but we are not yet selling anything into Mexico.
Okay. And the reason I ask that question is, how many of those countries, just to get a general understanding, I don't need to pry into your business practices, but a general understanding of how many of those countries you travel to before you can open up a market in order to build a network that you can work with?
To tell you the truth, I've never been to Australia or any of the other countries with the exception of Canada, which, if you live in Cleveland, Ohio, is right across the lake, so they're our next-door neighbor. Travel to that country has not been, to those countries has not been a crucial element, but in all of those cases, we may have kind of fallen into, those were accidental export markets as opposed to deliberate accomplishments where we can say we're selling products into Colombia.
So, but generally speaking, I mean, you had accidental markets, but when you decide you want to sell into a country, do you make a commitment that you travel there and build the network?
At this point, I'm not working on those other incidental markets. Canada, I visit, and I do work some shows in Canada on a regular basis.
Okay,
but the others are small pieces right now.
Ms. Fulton, I know that you have some ambitious export plans, so I'm curious as to how that networking has worked for you in the past and what countries you're shipping to now and how that's going to work for you to build your network in the future.
Well, thank you. We export to China. We I did go to the country in Canada last year and meet with buyers to build that market, and we hired a Canadian broker. And so we should be exporting to Canada hopefully within the next 60 to 90 days. I've also met with buyers from Mongolia. We also have buyers in Europe that I've met with, but I don't have a presence in Hong Kong. I don't have a presence in Germany. So I'm going over there to pave the way to get our products over there.
You know, I brought that up because that is my suggestion. It's just my belief that this world runs on networks. And if you're looking people in the eye and taking the measure of them, you can be a lot more effective than if you're transferring things electronically these days. And it still comes down to people, and it comes down to trust and professionalism and efficiency. So, and you mentioned Germany. How do you intend to crack into that market?
Well, I forgot to mention, so thanks for coming back to me. As a small business, though, without SUSTA, the Southern United States Trade Association, I would have never been able to go to Germany or Hong Kong. And so what we're doing is we get subsidized once we go over there. We get reimbursed for part of our airplane and our hotels. And they also set up one-on-one buyer meetings for me so that I'm not wasting my time because, again, I've never been to Germany. I'm going to have to figure it out. But by having SUSTA and North Carolina Export with me, holding my hand a little bit, even though they won't knock on the door, and they know I will, but they're going over there with me, and that makes a big difference.
I think, as Mr. Meyer said, the biggest barrier is fear of the unknown.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely. Do you run into any sanitary or phytosanitary issues trying to market into Europe?
I haven't got that far yet, but I'll get back to you on that.
I'll be looking forward to that. We are in the process of opening up our negotiations with a transatlantic trade agreement. I don't know if that was mentioned here before I arrived, but those issues have been huge barriers, especially from the agriculture and the food side. And one of those things is an issue that I see is a trade protectionism on how we process chickens that aren't allowed into Europe right now. So I actually just came back from some fairly intense negotiations over there on this, and I'm not at this point optimistic we're going to get something done because trade protectionism is often masked in those kind of issues like sanitary, phytosanitary issues, GMO issues, et cetera. But I'm going to take it those are natural-born cucumbers turned into pickles at your place. And,
yes, sir.
And I appreciate the chairman for holding this hearing and all of the witnesses. It's a breath of fresh air for me, as Blaine said, to hear from real people doing real work. I think that was you, Blaine, but maybe not. But I know that's what you believe. Thanks. Now yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. King, and we are going to have votes called in just a couple of minutes. I had a couple of questions, but I would like to yield to Ranking Member Murphy. You had a couple of follow-up questions you wanted to hit?
Just one more, and then yield back. Mr. Myrie, as you highlighted in your testimony, regulations on exports have been an increasingly significant part of what's happening nowadays. In addressing national security concerns, though, these rules place a high degree of scrutiny on products, but they also demand more resources from firms to navigate the complex and time-consuming process. Do you believe there can be a more balanced approach between security and commercial interest in implementation of these export controls?
Certainly. I don't have any specific recommendations. I have to go back to my area experts to find out what those are, but there certainly has to be a balance. We understand and understand the challenges in which you have to balance national security with the red tape in which small businesses have to navigate. What we try to do is make sure that we mitigate that by staying attuned to what that red tape is and then working with those small businesses to work through those.
Do these more stringent controls compel foreign companies to avoid U.S. products or to retaliate against their American competitors?
I haven't heard that there's any resistance against that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Just to be able to follow up on that just a little bit, can maybe very briefly, because they have now called votes for us to go over, can you give us a month, 2 months, about how long does it take you to be able to get all of the information you need together, for the foreign transactions to actually take place?
Well, I'll just answer real quickly. I met Mr. Shen in May, and we didn't export until October. And it took actually 7 weeks to get my product from the boat all the way over there. So again, met in May, and then it left my dock in October.
That's the fast track. I would say that the normal experience for most of our small business clients, we work intensively with them. It takes anywhere from 80 to 100 consulting hours to research, to develop, and then identify specific market strategies. But then they have to go to, as the Congressman highlighted, to the country to develop the networks, find the buyers, et cetera. We find that it takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months at a minimum.
I'm a small businessman, and that's always been our experience, and time investment and capital investment to be able to create those markets, to till the field, if you will, and then to be able to ultimately get there, and then have 60, 90 days before you get that first check coming back after you've established the market is always a real cost that we've got to understand. I believe our panel almost unanimously has stated that some of the largest barriers to exporting is understanding and complying with those foreign regulations. And can you explain, and again, if you keep it brief, I apologize for our time constraints on our end here, how you keep up with those foreign regulations, including technical barriers and changes to the tariffs?
What I would say to that, Chairman, is I keep different folders for each different country, and I print off everything that's supposed to go to China, everything that's going to Canada, and keep it totally separate and keep a large file on it. But again, I'm sure there's information out there I need to know that I don't.
Right.
From our professional expertise, all of our people are certified in their area of expertise, so they're required to continue to have professional development training to stay attuned to their area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
We do anticipate when we finally get going in Mexico that we will actually retain counsel in Mexico to keep us appraised of the situation in that country, and then working with domestic resources, USIAC, and others to stay up on U.S. trade regulations.
Right. And believe me, I personally have a lot of great empathy for the idea of having one-stop shopping to be able to get that information. I think that having a myriad of different websites to be able to go to when we're starting out and all we want to do is make pickles or to be able to sell faucets, that's our real business, and the better positioned, I think, from the federal end of the world, and we have some great examples in North Carolina and my home state of Colorado as well, being willing to work with people wanting to be able to export going out. I think simplification and consolidation of that information is going to be really critical for us. And I guess just for me to be able to close here, just real quickly, if I could get maybe Mr. Fulton and Ms. Fulton and Mr. Art to be able to explain, if you just had one bit of quick advice to be able to give other businesses that want to be able to export, what would that be?
Take the risk, do it. It's worth it in the end.
Right.
The call USIAC was the best advice I got. It has not been complete and totally satisfactory, but they've done a good job, and I think I would make the same recommendation to someone who asked me.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to be able to come in for this, I believe, important committee hearing. This is about jobs. I believe, Ms. Fulton, this is probably your family, if I'm seeing the same eyes
Yes,
sitting
sir.
behind you.
Very proud.
It's
Thanks.
about these kids. It's about their future, and it's about American entrepreneurialism to be able to get this country moving and be able to get our people back to work. And small business can help lead the way. And when we've only got 1% small businesses having that opportunity to be able to really get in right now, there's a big market for us to be able to capture and to be able to put that American flag on our products. No country in the world does it better than the workers and the entrepreneurialism of this country. And thank you again. First meeting together with our new ranking member here as well. This committee will continue to closely follow the barriers and issues faced by small business exporters, and I look forward to working with you and my colleagues in Washington on new solutions to be able to make overall trade practices and processes easier for small businesses. I ask unanimous consent that the members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered, and this hearing is now adjourned. Again, thank you.